Well, growing up, we grew up just like any normal family. Always very big on church, and it was just an important part of our upbringing. I can remember being very young, and my dad was definitely the anchor of the family. He would always just a great leader, loved my mom, loved us, and when I was a little boy, I can remember being maybe 6 or 7 when I could actually grasp the concept that he was ill, that he had lung cancer, and it had developed from his mouth and spread to his lungs, and he had cancer ever since I was a baby. And it was a very rare form of cancer. And I remember, every year got more and more difficult for him and for the family as we saw the regression happening and saw everything taking place. And that's when every year it kind of became more real for me, and it became more, I could see that the decline was, happening at a pretty rapid rate. I was 11 years old when my dad passed. And I remember we were uncertain about how we would make ends meet, but we had someone paying for our mortgage, and we had people that were dropping off meals every night, and it was just amazing to see how God carried us through that situation. But it was a real dark time. Going through those years of being a teenager, I could see that, my mom was doing the best she could, to raise us up, and still involved with the church. But I began drifting. I began, going through some times, and she married Dave, awesome guy, and shortly after she married Dave was involved in a motorcycle accident. I was 17 when my stepfather passed away. So after David passed, that was when I realized I was going to do it my own way. That's when I realized that I was tired. I wanted a dad, and there was a big void in my life. So I definitely began going through a time where we just began partying, and we began just completely living a lifestyle that was just horrible. And for me, that was how I dealt with it. That was how I really went through that process of grieving and that process of really trying to cope with what had happened. That was what I wanted to do, and I was fed up. I was mad, I was angry. My anger came to expression just through binge drinking. It came to expression through excessive use of marijuana, to try to cope with what had happened. I had no other desire, no other want than to do that at that point in time. One of the reasons that it felt so good to drink, and the reason it felt so good to live that lifestyle, is because it numbed the pain. It numbed what was happening. It numbed the past. And finally one night, we had a party at the house, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning on the floor, completely alone. Everyone was gone. The music was still going. The doors were wide open in the house, but there was nobody there. I remember laying on my back, looking up at the ceiling, and just being broken and feeling alone. And at that point in time, that's when I realized that was rock bottom for me. That was the point where I really felt in my heart God had to bring me to that point of being in complete submission, like a little baby, just helpless on the floor and just broken and alone. And shortly after that, God brought Kay, my wife, back into my life. I met Kay when I was in 4th grade at Calvary Chapel, which was awesome. And we began dating. And Kay basically told me, she gave me an ultimatum. She said, hey, if this is gonna work out, then you need to stop doing this and this and this and this. And it was a big list. God brought Kay back into my life for a reason, for a purpose. And since that situation occurred, God just spoke to my heart and said, hey, you know what, it's time to come back. For me, all those years of growing up, in a house filled with the love of Jesus, filled with my dad, and just authentic family, a caring environment, to being separated from that. And then getting a piece of that back, getting a piece of that love back into my life. God, was able to just completely restore me Kay and I moved to Beaumont back in 2012, and we were looking for a church close to home. And we realized that Pastor Rod had, begun a church in Calamasa. Rooted was, someone was talking about it, and the most incredible thing is I showed up on that first night, like 15 minutes late. I'm always late to stuff, and I showed up late. One of the many things that was awesome about Rooted was the fact that, we had our heavy hitters in there. We had Pastor Rod and Pastor Ron, and then you had Garrett, and it was amazing because, I was just like a kid in school, just taking notes, doing my best to make sure that I didn't miss anything. But one of the most amazing things was knowing that there were a group of guys in the room that had battled with some of the same things that I had. Pastor Ron told us, he said, I truly feel like the goal of Rooted is to get as close to Jesus in the next 10 weeks as we possibly can. And it's not forced, but as you go through it, I fully and completely believe that happened. The serve experience really opened my eyes and really was a way for God to reveal to me where He wants me to be. And ever since then, it's been a game changer. I would tell the person that, that's skeptical or uncertain or unsure if they should do Rooted, that if you give it a chance, if you take that step, it is life-changing. And I have seen what it's done in my own life and the life of our brothers in that group of 10 guys, and it is unbelievable.